Yo ho! What's up, everyone? How are y'all?
Hello.
Welcome back to another Tech Talk with Loyd and
And Lexi.
and Lexi. I've got to learn where I need to point with this camera.
It's all
Yeah,
backwards.
it's
So,
always reversed.
no, that way.
So, so welcome again to another Tech Talk. Today we're going to be coming at you with something pretty interesting. Um, I don't know how to put this in like a way that would maybe blunt things for people, but we're going to be talking about conspiracy theories. And when we say that, we mean conspiracy theories, things that, you know, are not proven to be real and quite often just fake. So today we're going to talk about conspiracy theories and their relation to technology. One of the big ones that we're going to be doing first up is going to be the 5G, and then from there we'll talk about some other ones that relate to technology as well. But first, Lexi, what have you been up to this week?
Um, Work.
Work,
Lots of
definitely,
work.
definitely.
We're actually, Rachel and I have been working on revamping the teen summer reading program since we have been notified that LSC will be closing their facilities until June.
Oh yeah, new
So,
news out today. Yeah, June. What was the date
first,
set? June 1st. Yes.
yeah,
So
at the
once
moment.
once again, we are delayed from opening, but that's okay. We'll keep doing what we're doing, providing content as we can, and hoping to make everyone else's life a little bit more fun with the things that we do. So I'm glad that you.
We're working our darndest
Yeah,
to keep everything running for status quo, I guess.
yeah, and it's a hard thing to do. It's a little difficult to do that from home, and when you're working with other people that you usually work with right next to you, because you guys have office chairs like right next to each other. You guys can just look over and talk to each other. Me, on the other hand, I'm in another room entirely.
So when you want to talk to somebody, you have to work for it.
I have to walk down the hall. Yeah, see if anyone's in the room. Hey, where's everyone? No. Well, it's been about the same here. For me personally, I've been editing videos for other people. We just did another Baking is Making. This was done by Kyla, so go check that out. She talks a lot about how you can use some of the genealogy preservation techniques to help save bits of your family history that relate to cooking. A lot of times people don't realize it, but like we talked about last week, uh, cooking is also a form of STEM. There's science involved, and then the genealogical record portion of that is pretty cool as well, because now you have a little bit of family history with that, and you can preserve those things for years to come and pass it along. So take a look at her video if you haven't already. It's on Facebook. I think it was posted earlier today, and then next week we'll probably try and have some more. We'll see what we can do. Other than that, beyond just editing videos, we delivered our TXRX face shields, the Rev 2
Ooh,
lower, the Rev 2 upper portions, so the big ones that actually allow the face mask to be put down all
yeah.
over people's faces. So we were printing those, and we were asked to halt production on that and just deliver what we could. So I was able to go out today and deliver. And there's also that new, the new, I don't want to call it an edict, but whatever was posted
So
about
you
wearing
have
face
to have the
masks.
face mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
I've been
have to figure out what I'm gonna do about that.
if you can find some cloth, there's some material sources out there that we can try and do. And if anyone of us on staff here needs them, I am now printing the little ear savers or whatever you call them, the ones that allow you. So if you have an elastic face mask, it'll relieve some of the pressure from your ears as it usually pulls on them. I'm printing those pieces, so I'll pass them out to our staff at least, and I'll see how many I can get out. So let me know, but we can try and get some out to y'all. So that is my next project, and then I think we're going to be starting on another set of headbands as well. So that's sort of been my week. Other than that, I've been playing some Magic the Gathering. I've got a whole bunch of new cards in, which is really interesting.
How have you been doing that?
I've actually been using this setup here, so I've been streaming it. What I do is I take this webcam and I mount it to this mic boom that I have here, and I just clip it up. So I have a playmat down here that's actually been my mouse pad for years and years and years. But now it actually gets to act as a card playmat, and basically we'll just go into a webcam session and we just play that way. It's pretty interesting. And one of the things that maybe we'll end up doing is I know a lot of places have been doing these happy hours workplace happy hours over through social distancing. So one of the things we can do is set up this and have maybe keep talking and nobody explodes, Jackbox Party Pack, and just sit back and relax and everyone have a good time off work hours. That way we're not all working on things. We can relax a little bit, have a little fun. Anyway, so yeah, that's been my week. But let's go ahead and let's get into it, huh? So I don't know if I'm sure some of you have seen it, maybe posted on Facebook itself, which is actually where we're live streaming to, and I find it a little ironic. But there have been a lot of claims recently that 5G is causing a variety of issues. Some trying to directly correlate it to coronavirus, others saying it'll cause cancer, it'll kill people, and along with that has also come a lot of response from people trying to dismantle 5G infrastructure. I know in the UK there was a few attacks. One was an arson on a. There's actually been a few arsons.
Down a tower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And a lady attacking workers. So there's been some interesting reactions to this, but in general, what is it that 5G? Where's this all coming from? That sort of thing. Um, and what I can say is, particularly, it's coming from people who haven't really done much research. There's been a lot of misinformation flowing about, one of which was actually from a scientist who has been put on probation. And you'll find this a lot. It stems a lot from the anti-vax community sometimes, or just people who are looking for an authority figure, an authority source, and then not further looking at that authority, Is
Not looking at their background.
Right. Like, oh, they say doctor, so could be a doctor of something else completely. Doctorates are more than just medical.
Yeah.
So sometimes the authority figure is
I
untruthful.
have a doctorate in arts, but I'm going to tell you about astrophysics. Somehow it's going to kill you.
Yeah, stuff like that. But it's actually this doctor in. I wish I had his name. Unfortunately, I don't have the article linked anymore. But I'll try and find it here. This doctor has currently, let's see, Dr. Thomas Cowan. There we go. He is on disciplinary probation, and he was essentially claiming that 5G poisons cells, and as such, those cells would excrete a waste product that somehow became COVID-19. So this is one of the major things that are pushing people to make these claims that 5G is causing this craziness. That's not true. It's been reproduced multiple times in labs. Scientists have been able to replicate COVID. It is not something that is created through 5G waves of any sort. But he had posted this video, and it went viral. And this is a part where technology is coming in and sort of changing these sort of conspiracy theories and making them a little bit more widespread. A lot of time people are taking things at face value. So one of the big perpetuators is usually Facebook. It's nothing against the company at large, but they do need to crack down on this.
A mainstream.
Mm-hmm. So any place that you have a social media company that is got a large demographic of people or a large number of people, you're going to have things spread around. You can't stop it 100%. There's nothing you can do about it. But because so many people are on Facebook, it usually spreads pretty quickly. It's that whole viral campaign sort of thing that's going on. But essentially, this Dr. Thomas Cowan, currently on disciplinary probation because he has been, let's see, what were the things listed against him? Using drugs, untested drugs, and he was a big part of the anti-vax movement as well. Essentially, this person made a video and it went viral, and he was claiming all this stuff. The issue is with Facebook, whenever things go viral, it's because people are sharing it, right? So if I make a video like this and we put it live, anyone can watch it. In this video, and I'm going to preface this with saying this is not a true statement. The following thing I'm saying is not true. I could say that your microwave will kill you if you let it run for 6 minutes exactly, and you stand 3 feet away from it. I could say something like that. There's no evidence that I'm presenting to you right now. The thing is, if I try and come at you with some sort of authority figure, I say I'm a doctorate, like Lexi was saying before. I have a doctorate in whatever, but I say I'm a doctor. Now I'm presenting myself as an authority on the subject, and people are taking that at face value. So from here, you could share this video to others and say, this doctor said that if I stand 3 feet away from a microwave running at 6 minutes, it'll kill me. Um, it's not going to
And
happen.
then from there, it just takes off.
And then from
Yeah.
there, it goes. It's shared and it's shared and it's shared. And you see this a lot with groups. So someone may share something to a group that they're in. That's not at large, but it's to a small subsection. And then someone from that group shares it to another group that they're in. So it may not even make the main Facebook post page that you're following of someone. They might keep it a little bit secret. But just this idea that,
Well, what's funny is, I'm sorry, you brought
yep,
up
go ahead.
microwaves. And I find it funny because when microwaves first came out, everybody did think it was going to kill them. It was going to give them all these diseases, and it was radioactive and all these different things. And it was a very common misconception at the time when they were first launching.
Yeah,
And somehow that still was able to be mainstream. It wasn't a conspiracy theory per se, but it was skewed information that was just added onto it by all these people who were presented as authority figures on the topic, and it just kept going.
right. So this is coming from a place of misinformation or misunderstanding. It may not even be that the person who is looking at the information is, you know, unable to make these, unable to connect dots or anything like, or say that they're stupid or anything like that. The thing is, scientifically minded people can make wrong assumptions as well, with presented with evidence that they don't then verify. So I've done it as well. Jumping to conclusions is always the biggest one. You jump to a conclusion just because you see one thing and it, oh yeah, that leads me to another. So
Biggest thing is what I see is correlation. I remember this because when I was actually getting my graduate degree in biological anthropology, one of the main things they drilled into my head was correlation does not equal causation.
right, yeah,
And it was like, well, ice cream sales go up in the summer, and so do drownings. And this was an example they used. And they were like, well, therefore, ice cream is bad and needs to be banned. Not necessarily the case.
right, right.
You
It's
know.
it's just two data points that you're looking at and going, oh, correlations. No, no, no. So calm it down. Let's look into it a little bit more. Don't take my ice cream.
I know, right? I have a feeling fists would be thrown if people tried to ban ice cream.
For real. Right now, you try and take away ice cream. Ooh, there's gonna be riots. There's gonna be riots. But this idea that technology can help spread misinformation so easily. We're in a data world in which I can reach out. We're having a conversation right now. We're not next to each other, but it's real time. We're using video. There's plenty of methods in which we can pass along information these days, and there's so many people who have access to it. Internet is something that is not considered a, a resource like water, in which it's
Necessary.
right. It's not something necessary per se. By the way, I've got you frozen on my end. Hopefully, you're still good.
I know. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And
Who
this
doesn't like
this
it?
is a problem with technology as well. You can see that we run into issues here and there. So even though it's not deemed a necessary resource, it is still something that people have access to widely due to a variety of free resources, whether it be from other companies providing it, or maybe it's just the fact that you have a cell phone with a data plan, which in most cases you do today if you have a smartphone. Um, Now I don't see you at all. I just see your dot.
There we go. It took a minute. I
Oh,
think my computer's slowly dying on me.
oh no. That noise you hear is the death whale. That fan buzz. That's the death whale of her machine.
Yeah, no joke. Oh man, my poor computer. I'm sorry.
It's
Go
all
ahead.
it's all good. So misinformation can be spread quite quickly, and this is also this happens as well with conspiracy theories. So another part of this conspiracy is the major part is that it's being spread. 5G is the spreading of coronavirus, which is It's a Chinese plot or something like that. There's so many different versions of this that I've seen, but it all seems to stem around the fact that China is spreading corona through 5G somehow, and this is not something that is true. I can tell you that right now. 5G does not spread a virus. It is nothing more than waves, radio waves, essentially. So you don't have to think of it as anything scarier than listening to things on the radio. In fact, we've had similar issues happen, and it once again stems from misinformation. As early as the 90s with cell phones in general, 2G and 3G networks. There we go. Now we got you. 2G and 3G networks that were originally put out there. People would make claims that that was going to give you cancer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't the same thing come out? Like, it's come out every single time they've made progressions from like 2G to 3G to 4, even 4G. There was stuff
Exactly.
going out.
I mean, you had talked about it with microwaves as well. Radio was another one. So like you see this progression of like technology increases and advances, and then there's this outcry from certain groups that are like, it's going to kill us, And I can't say specifically what it is because I'm not a doctor. I don't know. I'm not a doctorate of any kind, but I see it seems to often stem from. I think it's a fear, really, of change. It's an you're not under people don't understand the technology well enough, and so it becomes sort of this big, sort of magical, scary device, right? It's often what I keep seeing is like people, doomsday cultists and stuff like that, the same sort of thing. Uh, it's weird. It's really weird. But
There's a heavy reluctance to accepting change,
yeah,
and I think that just boils down to inherent human nature. You know.
right. There's usually an aversion to change, even if it's for the better in a lot of cases, and then
Yeah.
with that comes the pushback. This is why we shouldn't do this. Um, but yeah, 5G itself. So let's debunk a little bit of this. 5G itself is nothing more than another frequency. So a lot of times today, the things that we use, travel over radio waves. So we have these waves in the air, right? 5G is just allowing for faster speeds, so they're operating on a different frequency, and we need new kit in order to operate with this, which is why in a lot of countries, Britain specifically, and a few other parts of Asia and the Middle East, you'll see them building up their infrastructure, which is something that needs to be done. In all
Yeah.
cases, infrastructure is quite bad here in the U.S., and it's something that actually should have been done a long time ago. Is much like we had that expansion of highways, the expansion of our internet connection services should have been pushed as well. But unfortunately, it is something controlled by private companies, so we're at their beck and call whether or not they're going to put that stuff down. Which is why you often see a lot of the west of the U.S., not California, but a little bit between there. So Utah, Wyoming, all those places, a lot of the rural area, Montana, you'll find that connection is usually really hard to get in certain places, and it's because those people are so remote, despite the fact that
Yeah.
they have groups of people living in towns and cities in there. In most cases, it just has to deal with the fact that a service provider has not built those infrastructure pieces out for them. Even here, just north of Tomball where we work, a lot of times you can't get a certain ISP, internet service provider, in the area in Magnolia because they don't have any equipment out there. Well, you would think that if
Yeah.
they want a part of that share, they would do that. They don't want to spend the money, it looks like. So in order to create or to have these network connections, these 5G faster speeds, we need the infrastructure, which is what other companies are doing. They're seeing this correlation, COVID-19 and these towers going up. That's not what's going on. A lot of this also stems from the fact that some of these towers are being provided by Chinese companies. So Huawei, which is a phone manufacturer as well. There was the big Canadian Huawei issue. If you did you follow that at all? No.
Mhm.
Okay. So there's some things to be said about a government entity that controls these infrastructure pieces that are being created and having them deployed in other countries. Is there any maybe malicious intent for them? We couldn't say that, but I don't. It's not a virus spreader. If anything, the thing that they may be doing, and this is something that you'd see in InfoSec, which is sort of where my background lies, or I follow it mostly for fun. You'd find that an infrastructure piece may have a backdoor so that someone can gain access to that and maybe tap the network for listening. That may be as malicious as it goes. Maybe they do something else to it, but it's not going to be spreading viruses. That's not the case. This is just simply a misunderstanding of what the technology does.
I was going to say it's completely and physically impossible for it to be spreading the virus.
Right. It's shooting radio waves. It's not like a spray gun or so. There's no one up there with a super soaker full of like coronavirus and spray. That's not the case. Um, it's an interesting thing to see all these groups pop up. Uh, but it just comes from a little bit of misunderstanding. People take a piece of evidence presented to them through one of their trusted sources. It's a friend, right? It's a family member. Oh, they saw this. They wouldn't steer me wrong. And then from there, we see that gets spread further and further. And once again, they're just trusting the person that's giving it to them without actually looking deeper into the topic at hand. So a lot of this comes down to evaluating sources, which we're going to get into probably after this. But let's talk about another one. There was another one that we had discussed a little bit beyond 5G. Did you want to mention it?
Flat Earth.
Flat Earth. That was one of them as well.
That's, that's a movement.
That is a movement. Flat Earth is quite interesting because we have empirical evidence that the Earth is not flat. And despite all of that evidence mounted against them, there's still a large group of people believing that the Earth is flat. I don't know how else to describe it other than a denial of reality.
Yeah, I was gonna say there was this whole thing on Netflix. It's a documentary. It's called Behind the Curve,
Yes,
and you had actually recommended it to me.
I did.
And I was watching it the other day, and I was sitting there thinking, like, some of their points were like kind of valid in a more abstract way, like them not being taken seriously in the scientific field. Yes and no. Like, I think to a degree, like, proving beyond a doubt, like, that's part of a scientist's job, especially
Right.
if there's certain information that proves otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then there were other things where, like, the logic just did not make sense. So they talked about doing this experiment with a light beam and basically saying, for instance, if I hold up a 5 foot pole and it hits the atmosphere at 5 feet, and we take it over to this side and the scale is different, then the Earth is curved. But if it's the same distance, the Earth is flat.
Right. So that
Like, the logic behind it didn't really.
they'd come up with a hypothesis, which is great because they were trying to apply the scientific method, and that is something that you want to see people do. Um, they applied the scientific method, and it was quite literally, we have a light on one end, and then a light on the or in another spot on another end, a set distance apart. Now they were trying to say, okay, if at X height across X distance, we can still see the light, based on information that was being provided by others to show curvature. They were using those distances. They would say, okay, if we can still see that at that height, then that must mean that the Earth is flat because there was no change in elevation for us. However, if we have to raise that light up higher in order to get it to see on the other side, then the Earth is obviously curved. It was a great piece because it was like just this one little bit. It was a group that was doing it. It wasn't a major piece. It was just sort of at the end. They were tying in like these people who were trying to prove these things, which is great. It's great to have skepticism. It was then though that they ended up running this test, and the results that they saw were showing that the Earth was indeed curved. And this wasn't the first test they had run. This is just another large scale test. They'd also spent like $20,000 to get a laser gyroscope that would show, over time how many degrees the Earth is rotated. They spent a crazy amount of money, sourced this money, and got this thing to prove this wrong. And the issue became that after evidence was piled on, they kept changing the goal. They moved the goalpost. Oh well, then it was obviously heaven energy that was messing with this thing. So we have to encase it in this one thing. Okay, so they encase it, do another test. Huh? That still didn't show the results that we wanted. It wasn't that the results they were getting were wrong. It was that they weren't the results they would wanted. So they're trying to use science.
Basically, they were they were skewing their data to fit what they wanted, not what it was showing.
Right. They kept trying to prove something that they already believed, and that's not what science does. The scientific method will show you a set of information here, and then from there, you start with a hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, and then you see if that result was true. The hypothesis that they tested kept proving false, and they kept moving the goalpost. Well, then something else affected it. Okay, great skepticism. Do it again. Okay, well, that thing didn't work, so it must be something else. Okay, now we have to get this thing. So they kept moving it over and over again. And that becomes the problem, is when you're unable to let go of that belief and look at the hard evidence in front of you. Um, and a lot of times, there was even a small little bit of a thing from The Guardian. It was a small podcast. It was about 20 minutes long talking about this. It was like, how do you get someone off of a conspiracy theory? How do you get someone who's been a diehard believer to step away from that and show them? And the biggest thing is, you can't ostracize them. You can't just go, you're dumb, right? Like, that doesn't help anyone.
It doesn't explain anything. It doesn't help them see what's going on. If anything, it makes them more reluctant to believe what you believe, type of situation.
So if you see someone saying these things, don't just deride them. That is not they're a human being, just like anyone else. Every human deserves to be treated with respect. So doing the same for them is common. It's just common knowledge. You don't deride someone because of their beliefs.
Exactly.
Now, from there, the other thing is to try and show them the way. So maybe talk with them, have those discussions, provide these bits of evidence, and show them, where their fallacies might be popping up. Try and show them the evidence that would guide them into the right direction. The issue becomes usually is a lot of times these things are taking place online. And I don't know about you, but have you ever gotten mad online?
Yeah.
Yeah? Have you ever had a fight with someone online over the stupidest thing? I have. I have.
I get passive aggressive online.
Oh, okay.
I'm like this sneaky angry person. So like most of my anger would come from like being in MMOs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like if I was playing a healer, I'd just not heal that person because they were being stupid.
I'm the tank, I need heals. Oh, sorry. Didn't that item that you just rolled need for, doesn't that help you? Oh, weird. That doesn't help you. If only the healer had it, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times there's a disconnect with people online, and they don't see the person behind the screen. So when you're talking and you're having this fight with someone through text, you don't care that they may be a person. You don't care about their beliefs. You may just go, I'm right and you're wrong. And I've had this happen quite a bit, especially when I was younger. You can't fall into that trap. Remember, this is another person. Treat them with respect in all forms. Remember that when you're talking with them, and don't let the things that they're saying goad you, especially if they're looking for a response. Because a lot of times people will, and this is on either side, someone will try and goad for a response and then throw the, oh, you're just being angry or irrational, look at how you responded to these things. They're trying to use that to as a defamation of character, essentially. So just be careful with those sorts of things, but provide people with the evidence that, and layer it on, like here's a piece, just keep throwing it at them and try and exhaust their resources there and show them that, hey, maybe the thing that you were thinking about isn't as valid as you thought. That's what I would say to try and do. But there, it was actually from The Guardian, I believe, a British newspaper, where a lot of this stuff was happening, right? They had the attacks and the arsons and stuff like that, and people were being harassed who were laying this infrastructure, because that's currently what they're doing. So they talked to specialists and experts, and it was quite an interesting little podcast. It was like 20 minutes long. I recommend taking a look at it. But flat Earth is another one of those things, and it's just it's coming from people who might might have problems with reality in some cases. At least with one of the guys. Do you remember? Because we both watched this. You remember the one guy who was making the videos and was like the prima donna about it all, and he was like, they're all a
The main
WB.
dude.
Not the main dude. He was one of the ones who was off camera sometimes. I can't remember his name because I didn't really care that much to remember the name, but he's basically claiming that everyone was in the pocket of the FBI and this was all
Oh, yeah,
WB.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Him.
So like that sort of thing, it's hard to try and I don't know how you can prove something wrong. That's just someone's belief. You can.
I think to a degree, especially with something like a flat Earth type of mentality, a large part of it comes down to. So, side note, still relevant
Uh huh.
in an abstract way. I listened to a podcast called Cults.
Okay.
Free to download, really interesting. Basically, what they do is they do two-part episodes. They do one episode on which they talk about the cult leader and his upbringing, the psychological aspects behind it, and all of this. Second part, they go into like the actual cult mentality
Hmm.
and like what is bred in those environments. There are some theories that are kind of applicable to a belief like this because
Yeah.
it comes down to you have a charismatic leader. I mean, we saw the main guy who was spearheading this. He had built up a community around it, and that's another thing is people just wanting to feel like they belong to something bigger. And
Exactly. Yeah. And
when
that.
it doesn't pan out the way they want it to,
Yeah. Then things can be interesting in that regard. But yeah, the main people, like everyone who was on there, they were normal, everyday folk. It's just they believe differently, and it was sort of a okay. That's an interesting way to view things. But in all honesty, the biggest thing with conspiracy theorists is don't don't try and fight them. I would say just
if you're somebody who is
present
very
your
easily
yeah.
aggravated by this type of stuff, I would not have a discussion or confrontation with them.
Absolutely,
It won't
absolutely.
end well.
But do try and stop disinformation or information spreading that is incorrect. And this is something that tech companies are trying to do as well. Twitter and YouTube have taken down multiple videos and have curtailed posts of people claiming certain things about COVID and flat Earth. I haven't seen yet because I don't think anyone's been attacked for it. But in the
I
case
don't
of
think so.
the COVID-19, there were conspiracy theories. There was attacks that stemmed from these things. So companies have now started to take stances against this sort of stuff because it's promoting unsafe actions to occur. So you're starting to see this, and some people may go, "Oh, my freedom of speech." Your freedom of speech only goes so far, and when you're inciting violence or promoting it, there can be a problem. And that often, the big example is yelling fire in a movie theater, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
So, like, same sort of thing. Someone can get hurt from these actions because they did something that you told them to do, and it ended up with their death, or someone then took action based on these things because they believed it fully, and then it led to their death or hurt or damage. Um, and we're seeing this sometimes. There's actually a really great medical history podcast called Sawbones. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. No? Okay. It often talks about snake oil salesmen and placebo effect sort of medicines and things like that. Cure-alls is often what's being promoted by people. Oh, this cured me of cancer. This cured me
Oh,
of these sorts of things. Even in today's world, there's still a few of these that are promoted, uh, and it's done by the funny Justin McElroy, who's actually a podcast king. I recommend all of his stuff, and his wife, who is a doctor, Sydney McElroy, and they just talk about the history of these things, and I recommend taking a look at it. But it's all about that empirical evidence that you need to have an evidence-based thing in order to make these claims, and a lot of times these aren't coming from people that are using the scientific method. It's literally just trying to make money in a lot of cases. But that,
yeah.
that that sort of leads us to, I think, the final thing that we should talk about, which is looking for and evaluating the sources that you're seeing online. And this is something that a lot of people don't think about, and I don't know why it is. Maybe it's just because online is still somewhat new to a lot of people, or we're not thinking about it in the same way that we do other forms of media. But just like in radio, just like in TV, just like in print, you have to evaluate your sources. Anything can be put online, right? I can create a website myself, say I'm someone with a doctorate, put up a whole bunch of information. It can be incorrect. So we have to try and evaluate our sources, and there's a few things that we use. Um, Lexi, you are a librarian. I am not. I just want to mention that. So Lexi is a full blown powerful librarian. She has all the power. Um,
Of the power.
can you try and help explain a little bit on evaluating sources for us?
Yeah, so basically, it comes down to you don't want to take things at face value. You, especially, even if you think it's harmless, like I know we all do it from time to time where, like, oh, I'm going to divulge myself on this stupid little spam thing that popped up on Facebook, you know,
Mm,
and read about it. Especially when they start talking things about like scientific theories and things like that, you really need to look at like peer-reviewed articles. Those are typically your best way to go because that means they've been evaluated by other professionals within their field, and so that article is a valid source of information. It's not just somebody posting, "Hey, I got a doctorate in art, and I'm going to write an article about astrology or astronomy or something,"
right.
you know.
Yeah.
And it's just you're also probably not going to find articles like that on mainstream media. Sometimes they're not fun to read.
No.
They're very heavy on like the data and being correct in all of their information, and they're very nitpicky, and they're typically heavy reads.
Yes.
um, but it's where you're going to get the most correct information from.
Absolutely.
Even then, like, if we're not talking about peer-reviewed article data, I mean, just check the sources and where you're getting the information from, period. Like, it make sure it's not some type of, I hate using this word, some type of trash website where it's just they post a whole bunch of like random
Are you telling me
garbage up on
BuzzFeed
there.
isn't news? What? No.
Exactly.
Actually,
So like,
just adds up on that too. BuzzFeed does have an actual news portion, and they have had some actual decent journalism there that has evaluated sources, but the main BuzzFeed topics are usually trash. You can ignore those.
so I mean, like, just make sure you're not, especially if you're taking anything that's not from a very. One of my favorite sites I use is the American Association of Science.
hmm
That's one of my favorite places to actually grab like a lot, especially when it comes to like COVID-19 and 5G, like anything technical. I like grabbing my news from uh, the American Association of Science. It's the best place to get it because, again, these are professionals in the field, and the articles that they put out aren't just peer reviewed, they're also like news articles. So it's it leaves out all the super heavy, like 25 pages worth of information and condenses it down into like a paragraph of
Right.
news.
Summarize bullet points, but still linking the source for you so you can go find it and read it yourself and evaluate, which is
Exactly.
something that a lot of websites may not do. They may cite a source saying this person quote them on something, but then don't provide where they got that quote from, whether that be through an article that was posted in a news journal, even an interview online. They just you often just see them leave that stuff out, and it can lead to
I
misconstruing
would,
things. Yeah.
yeah, I would also say, since you brought up like social media quotes and things like that, or quotes about people, um, take anything that like comes off of somebody's social media post with a grain of salt. Like,
Right. Right. Yeah, definitely. They may be your friend, they may be a loved one, but think of where they got it, and just uh, try and evaluate those things yourself. If you see something though and you are interested in it, skepticism is fine. Dive into it, look it up. But you know, use more than one source. Don't just take the first hit on Google, because a lot of times this comes from, people spending money to pop their website on the top of that search bar.
Especially like those first five uh,
Mm-hmm.
results on
Yeah.
Google. Like if you're not paying attention, they say ad
Ad.
all the way in like the far right hand corner.
Always watch out for the ads, man. Always watch out for the ads. So evaluate those things, but it just takes a. I don't want to say it's a keen eye. It's just someone who can look for those things and not just glance at it. That's the thing. A lot of times people are looking for information now, fast, quick, quick, quick. I just want to see what this is, so they'll ask Google, and the first result is then something that may skew them due to bias, because it's a company who's produced those results, or any of the other, right? Accuracy may be off. It's just someone trying to get ad traffic up, and they've
Or somebody trying to get attention.
that too.
Because in all honesty, that does happen. People
Mm-hmm.
do post things to either get a rise out of somebody or to just get attention.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
happens.
internet points. They're not a valid currency, but people think they are, and they will try and get them as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never heard of that. I've never heard it called that before, but okay. Now I know what it's called.
I think that's more of a Reddit phrase, the karma, internet points on the internet, that sort of thing. But yeah, people are, they'll farm for karma and then use that to promote other things. It's interesting, the variety of web pages that we may view for information and not realize how we're being influenced by other biases or things like that. Just because there's algorithms that go on in the background that we may not even have thought of, and people are manipulating those to try and just be famous. You never know. Like it could be a variety of things, but I think that's pretty good for today, at least in terms of what we were going to talk about. So 5G is not going to give you COVID-19. Don't think that way, please. If you are interested in the subject, though, the spread of the infrastructure for these technologies is actually something that we vastly need. So taking a look at it would be, something I'd recommend. Write to your telecom, send them a letter, say, hey, I'd like to make sure that these speeds are out here, and just let them know, because I think the only thing that will push them is money, and you're their source of money. So make your voice heard, or even write
Yeah.
to a member of Congress or any representative and say that you would like to see these things here, and maybe they can push for those sorts of things as well. But thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope that you enjoyed this tech talk. That was sort of an odd skew from it. We talked on tech elements, and
Relevant.
yeah, no, it's definitely relevant. It's more of a we talked about some of the more obscure things out there. But yes, thank you for joining us again. My name is Loyd.